All right, friends, today I will eat some humble pie. I wish to redact some criticism I made of the Ice Age farmer, now the unshadowed, bit suspicious title. But in any case, I was a fan 6 years ago and did prepare for a food crisis that never came. Well, maybe I'm impatient. Call me impatient. We do seem to be developing something of a food crisis, and Ice Age Farmer is still on the ball. I have kept an eye on an ear open to what's happening to food prices, especially north of Mexico, in the US and Canada. And it's a serious problem for people, friends of mine. So, what's going on? This is the news that's really not in the news. It's lying by omission mostly, as I'll show. And well, thank Ice Age Farmer for keeping an eye on it. Let me share my screen again. This is a video he did a month ago or thereabouts. United Nations warns of food crisis, announces technocratic takeover of food production. Yes, it all makes sense, really, even in light of my other work, which doesn't talk about current events so much. My previous video lecture on Jewish prophets decoded. It's largely about how civilization began by destroying native food forests. So it was a manufactured food crisis that destroyed native traditions around the world. And we may be facing food crisis 2.0. It will look very different. It will not consist of burning food producing forests. This time, the weapons are very different. I believe we're experiencing weather manipulation, as I'll discuss in a moment. Market manipulation of farming produce prices and farming equipment prices. Manufactured increases in fuel prices. Manufactured lack of fertilizer. An aging farmer population. No one wants to grow food. That's also manufactured by our education system and market manipulation of food prices. We have general economic pressures forcing people to eat less already, I believe, or eat cheap bioengineered fake food. And of course, we have the media manipulation, making sure that we are not aware of what's happening to our most essential product, food. With that, well, let's have a look at, let me read from my Encyclopedia Comedia. Um, Not comedy entirely. The word comedia is a play on the Spanish word for food, comer. Um, One moment. This is from my section the economy, comedy, and I've just added a subchapter, the China plot. If everything is planned by the sadistic WCC, why did they make China the manufacturing hub of the global economy and the world's leading food exporter? What motivated that? Presently, China is responsible for 30% of the world's manufacturing and 25% of global food production. Why would the WCC make China the world's leading exporter of essentials, even though it is unique for its large flood zones and rivers? China has 228 rivers with drainage basins larger than 10,000 square kilometers. 3 of the world's 10 longest rivers flow through China. Research indicates that approximately 70% of China's total industrial and agricultural gross output value is concentrated in flood-prone areas and river plains. These regions, including major manufacturing heartlands like the Pearl River Delta and the Yangtze River Delta, generate a vast majority of the nation's wealth. But the nation's wealth, the world's wealth, not a majority, but a significant portion, and they remain vulnerable to extreme weather events. Here's a map I've borrowed from Climate Viewer, an expert on weather manipulation. And I was made aware of this some years ago, that China probably has the world's biggest weather modification infrastructure, and much of it is situated over the Tibetan Plateau, which receives the winter snows that feed these enormous rivers, not only into China, but into India, the world's second biggest food producer. Coincidentally, the US is the world's third biggest food producer, and its winter snowfall in the mountains is extremely low and has contributed to lack of water for farmers. Additionally, and suspiciously, approximately 62% of China's main rivers, which account for about 90% of the total river discharge in the country, are fragmented and regulated by dams. Government-funded hydrological studies indicate that the operation of massive dams and levees transform flood dynamics, reducing basin-wide flood extents by 50 to 70% during peak flows. Government-funded studies. However, such studies are contradicted by worsening flood catastrophes following unprecedented rainfalls, and they are mounting. Could these rainfalls possibly be due to the enormous weather modification infrastructure in China and Chinese-controlled Tibet? No, you don't say. Also from Climate Viewer, cloud seeding generators over the Tibetan Plateau. Officially, this is intended to prevent droughts, and yet secretly, probably intended to cause floods. How clever. We're trying to protect you always. China even has the world's largest dam, the Three Gorges Dam. If it breaks at full capacity, we will have the world's greatest unnatural instant disaster. Apparently, China was designed to be the weak link that would, when broken, destroy the global industrial economy and produce enormous suffering. It is probably more critical to the operation of our global industrial economy than the Strait of Hormuz and Middle Eastern oil, or close second. Language and literature suggest that the plan is indeed to use China to break the global economy. For example, the name China refers to fragile cups and plates, for which it was once famous. And in The Wizard of Oz, everything in the land of China breaks very easily. I know that book is, over 100 years old, but the plan is likely much older than that. The Bible's version of the flood story uses the words floodgates to refer to the sky when it released the water that caused the world-destroying flood. This suggests that the authors were thinking about man-made dams. They have floodgates. Dams, not rain clouds. Additionally, Noah's Ark contained 8 human beings, and the Chinese character for a boat is a highly stylized image of a boat with 8 human figures. This is not coincidence. This suggests that the WCC has planned global disaster involving floods in China. Turns out, too, that mostly fake history claims or grants China the title for the most catastrophic floods in the history of the world. Here's a little detail about that Chinese character for boat or ship with 8 humans. It's associated with 8 humans through popular mnemonic or folk etymology. The boat character is broken down into 3 distinct parts. The boat, yes. The ba, which is the number 8, and this, I'm not sure how to pronounce, represents mouths or people. There you have boat. Top right, number 8, bottom right, people. Yes, these are images of floods happening in China this year. I think unprecedented number of floods already. The world's worst natural disaster, the 1931 flood of China's Yellow River, drowned perhaps 150,000 people and killed as many as 2 to 4 million people. We're nowhere near that yet. Most of them from flood-related diseases. Officially, it was caused by heavy rains overwhelming dikes and levees. However, over the preceding centuries, much of the countryside was deforested, which prevents rain from being absorbed by soil and plants. As a result, the Yellow River allegedly rewarded China with not only the Yellow River, with over 1,500 floods. Maybe it was just the Yellow River. I think that's over a period of 2 or 3 millennia, but that's one flood per year or every 2 years. Also, the 2 great floods during the Han Dynasty and the world's 3 worst floods, including the 1931 flood. I wrote allegedly because the above number, 1,500, for floods is staggering, unprecedented. and suspicious. Where are the photos of floating bodies? Where are the mass graves? And surely humanity isn't so stupid as to subject itself to over 1,500 floods over a 2 or 3,000 year period. In 2026, if I believe the news, China is experiencing a serious one in a millennium flood every month, and the US is experiencing a once in a millennium drought and other challenges to farming. The Dust Bowl of the 1920s in the US was the worst natural disaster in US history. In the near future, it could easily be exceeded by the, I think, inevitable water crisis that probably will cause an unprecedented famine. The US produces almost 10% of the world's food, of which more than half is exported. That was another brilliant decision. I mean, to turn the US South, what's it called? Midwest, I don't know, into an agricultural production zone. It's highly susceptible to droughts, as the Dust Bowl proved. Dust Bowl of the 1930s, my mistake. It is in the rain shadow of the Cordillera Rocky Mountains. And it was never the best soil. It was always, what's the word? It was always a semi-desert. Yes. So plowing, intensive farming in the 1920s destroyed the rain cycle. Because as I've argued in another lecture, without greenery, without trees, plants, the rain cycle breaks. It does influence the rain cycle. Plants have a intricate relationship with the rain cycle. They actually release particles. I think it's bacteria that help seed the clouds, or that actually seed clouds and produce rainfall. Yeah, we're seeding clouds with airplanes and not organic material, metals, I believe. Well, enough of this. I hope it's not depressing. I hope everyone is encouraged to, as Ice Age Farmer likes to say, grow food. Start a garden. Well, I don't think gardens will quite cut it anymore. Most people are not really able anymore, not with the size of our typical yards, if you even have a yard. But to go a step beyond Ice Age Farmer, I do think our future is not going to be what it looks like today, and humanity will have to move to places where each of us can grow food year-round, not be dependent on fuel for heating, electricity for heating, not be dependent on others for one's income in order to buy food. This system is, this global economy, this global industrial agricultural system is not going to last beyond this century, I strongly suspect. With that, I wish everyone well.